Hey, it's me, Emily, and today we're going to talk about the cyclings of matter. Our team have V, Betty, and me. So let me talk a little bit about the cyclings of matter. So in general, cycling of matter is a process where the matter flows through an organisms. The matter in this cycle, which is the carbons. In the process, the cycle starts from carbons being absorbed by plants, where they make photosynthesis and respirations. So in general, carbons are in the plants. Herbivores eat the plants to receive it. In the last parts of the cycle, where carbons will be released. There are two ways for the carbons to be released. The first way is when an organism respirates to release the carbons. The second way is when an organism dies, the decomposer will break them down to either release the carbon inside of them, or the decomposer will take it and pass it through the soil and give it to the plants again. And let's start with Betty, the roles of carbons in force spheres.
So now I'm going to talk about the role of carbon in force sphere of the Earth. So there's like abiotics, the elements and biotics elements of this force sphere. The biotics one is the living things, and the biotics is elements is the non-living things. So for the biosphere, the biotics one is elements of all the living things containing from the uh, atmosphere, geosphere, or lithosphere, and the hydrosphere. And the non and the biotics elements of this is the cloud and the sunlight. So next one, the next one is the atmosphere. The non-living things elements or is the humidity and temperature, and the living things is the flying animals and decomposer. And for geosphere, the biotics, which is the living things, is the decomposer as well, and with the cow, snake, and animals that live on the plant with rock, soil, and the abiotics is elements which is non-living thing is the rocks, soil, and minerals. The bio, the last one is the biotics elements is the aquatic animals and aquatic plants, and biotics elements is a non-living thing is water, salt, and temperature. So carbon play is everywhere in the world, and this cycling through biosphere to um, atmosphere. Next one is the geosphere, the land, and to the water, and it's just the cycle, so it go again and again. So four sphere have their interrelationship with each other with bios. Bird is the biosphere, or from the atmosphere as well, through fly through the air, the atmosphere, and the water. Hydrosphere flow through the soil. So the sphere have the closely connected to each other. A change in only one sphere can affect two or more spheres. So what happens if um, this did not this one didn't have the connection? So whether can would seed with no water cycle, so plant will cannot grow. Plant cannot grow without water, and from the plant cannot uh, grow, and they cannot release oxygen, and um, an animal cannot absorb oxygen to alive or to alive for a plant. And human also have a huge impact in atmosphere, though there's a negative impacts such as burning fuels, burning fossil fuels, polluted the atmosphere, pulling the waste in landfill affect the geosphere, which is the land, the ground, the pumping waste into the ocean, harm the hydrosphere, the ocean, the water, and overfishing or habitat destruction can reduce the diversity of living things in the biosphere. So I have the conclusion for this one. If there are less carbon, it will less photosynthesis and less respiration. Less photosynthesis is, as I said, is photosynthesis absorb cannot grow and cannot get oxygen, so therefore there's less energy source and nutrient for the living things.
And now it's me, Emily. Now I'm going to talk about the role of photosynthesis and cell respirations in cyclings of matter. So, where does the photosynthesis happen? The photosynthesis happens in the chloroplast of the heterophyll. So, how does the photosynthesis work? Photosynthesis takes in carbon dioxide, which are the light's energy, and water. It releases glucose and oxygen as a byproduct. Photosynthesis breaks down carbon dioxide to make glucose that is used in cell respirations to make ATP. So let's go into the light independence. It's converted the sunlight to chemical energy in the forms of molecules, which are the ATP and the NADPH. The light-independent state is also known as Calvin cycle. It takes place in the stroma, the space between the thylakoid membranes, and does not require light. During this state, energy from the ATP and NADPH molecules is used to example carbohydrate molecules, just like the glucose from the carbon dioxide. What are the balance of photosynthesis? It is carbons plus water forms glucose plus oxygens. And let's go to cell respirations. So where does the cell respirations happen? Cell respirations happens in the mitochondria of the autotroph. So how does it work? Cell respirations require glucose and oxygens. It releases carbons and water as a byproduct. Cell respirations work in the presence of oxygens. What's happened when there is not enough oxygen to carry out cellular respirations? Without the ATP, it will be less produced, but if oxygen is not present, some of the organism can phenomenations to continually producing the ATP. Last but not least is V, the role of carbon cycling.
The roles of cyclings of matter. So, what is carbon cycle? Cycle is the circulations of carbon on the earth in which atmospheric carbon dioxide is converted into organic nutrient through the photosynthesis and again converted back into inorganic states by respiration, decay, or combustion. The atmosphere, the ocean, vegetation, rocks, and soil form the major carbon reserves of our planet. And carbon cycle through the ecosystem. Carbon is an element found in all living things. Carbon moves through the earth, and in the cycle referred to the carbon cycle. If through the carbon dioxide gas found in Earth's atmosphere, thus carbon enters the living thing part in ecosystem. use carbon dioxide. Plant use carbon dioxide to make sugar. That's part called photosynthesis. Release their process called photosynthesis. Carbon release cycle back into atmosphere. Carbon release cycle into the back atmosphere. And then when the living things die and decay, the rest of the carbon is make up living matter is released.
Next is what are the roles major of the carbon cycle. There are 4 steps of carbon cycle: producer, consumer, feeders, and roles of fossil and fossil fuels. So first one is producer. Is the photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Is the carbon present in the air as carbon dioxide is absorbed by plants. The primary producer to produce food in form of photosynthesis and process call it cellular respiration. So second one is the roles of primary consumer. The primary consumers, such as cows or horse, use the plants as their food, and carbon get accumulated and fixed into bodies into form of organic carbon, a process known as carbon fixation. So next one is the roles of the distributus feeder as decomposer. Once plants and animal died to fix organic carbon is released back into the atmosphere as a carbon dioxide gas through their decompositions by their detritus feeders. And the end is the roles of fossil and fossil fuels. Is the compositions. The carbon that is left over in the bodies of dead organisms after decays become the fossil fuels over many years, which is combusted to release the carbon stored in them back into the atmospheres, thus completing the cycle. So why is the carbon cycle is important? The carbon cycle is important in the ecosystem because it moves carbon, a life-sustaining element, from the atmosphere and ocean into the organism and back again to the atmosphere and ocean. Scientists currently looking into ways in humans can use other, not carbon content foods for energy. So, what are the main process of carbon cycle? In natural carbon cycle, there are 2 main processes which occur. Is photosynthesis and metabolism. During photosynthesis, plants use carbon dioxide to produce oxygen. During metabolism, oxygen is used and carbon dioxide is a product. This carbon cycle with diagram. Carbon cycle explains the movement of carbon between Earth and biosphere, geosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere. Carbon atoms are then released as carbon dioxide when organisms respired. That formations of fossil fuels and sedimentary rocks contribute to the carbon cycle for a very long period. Know more about how matter cycle is related to carbon cycle. That's matter cycle is through the carbon cycle. When living things is died and decayed, the rest of carbon that make up living matter is released. This is my poster that explain how the carbon cycle steps is come up for the carbon, and the 4 steps is Betty's was showed already. Thank you for watching.